Hello from the Channel studio in London and welcome to another edition of Foreign Dispatches, the program that takes you around the world in 25 minutes. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. On the program this week, civilians on both sides pay the price of unprecedented escalation in hostilities between Israel and Gaza, plus Western Afghanistan hit by 3 powerful earthquakes in less than a week. Humanitarian groups are scrambling to assist civilians caught in the conflict between Israel and Hamas amid an intensified blockade of Gaza and ongoing fighting. Israel declared war after the Palestinian militants launched a massive, highly coordinated attack over the weekend. Hundreds of people have been killed on both sides. Residents are seen running for cover as Israeli airstrikes continue to pound the Gaza Strip on Monday, as Israel pressed on with its most intensive retaliatory strikes ever. The Israeli military said it had called up an unprecedented 300,000 reservists and initiated Operation Swords of Iron against Hamas with a series of airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. The move was in response to the devastating weekend attack by Hamas gunmen.
The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
Hamas launched the attack on Saturday morning, showering Israel with thousands of rockets as its fighters stormed through Israeli security barriers that surround the territory, launching attacks inside southern Israel. Israel responded with a wave of airstrikes on targets inside Gaza as its soldiers battled Hamas fighters in the streets of southern Israeli towns. The attack marks the most severe conflict between Hamas and Israel since the 11-day fighting in May 2021. Hundreds of people have been killed by both sides in days of violence. After hours of intense bombardment by Israeli jets, Hamas said it would execute an Israeli captive if civilian houses were bombed without warning. Abu Dakar lost 3 children, another 2 were injured, and the fate of her 6th child is unclear.
They bombed us suddenly, without any warning. We suddenly felt that everything had fallen on us. I was hiding between the sofa and the door, so there was no pressure on me, only on my leg, but I didn't hear any sound coming from my children. It took them 3 hours to remove the rubble above me.
As of Tuesday, 700 Gazans were confirmed killed in Israeli strikes. According to Gaza officials, whole districts in the area have been flattened. At least 700 Israelis were killed and dozens more were abducted into Gaza in scenes that have left a country which had long prided itself on its ultra-efficient military and security services in profound shock.
Very scary situation. Many people have died already, and we hear about people being kidnapped and taken either from the military base or even from the home, and hostage situation which is still ongoing now, and obviously barrage of rockets and attacks from the sea. So it's very scary right now, and as you can see, Tel Aviv is very empty, and the south of Israel is suffering even more. And we're hearing a lot of reports, so it's quite scary.
Very hard to put it in words. Because on Friday there was a holiday called Simchat Torah, and I was in the synagogue and we were dancing with the Torah and we were singing and having a very high time, an absolutely amazing time of unity and happiness. And then waking up to the sirens, where I didn't even understand what was going on. There were a lot of emotions, a lot of anger, a lot of shock, a lot of mourning. I think I cried for the last 2 days, and today I said, no, I have to get out a little bit just to see what's going on. Horrible what's happening to our beautiful little country.
Events on Saturday were humiliating and were horrifying and were the worst I've been through, or we have been through. And I'm bleeding and crying. On the other hand, we know that what Israel does or wants to do now is not properly legitimated, because she's chasing Palestinian civilian in Gaza. It's not the people who attacked.
Israel was caught completely off guard by a massive assault, and authorities have vowed to completely destroy the military and governing capabilities of the group, which is deeply rooted in Gaza and has ruled unchallenged since 2007.
This is Israel's 9/11. This is Israel's 9/11, and Israel will do everything to bring our sons and daughters back home. Today, many members of the international community are supporting Israel, yes. But if history has taught us anything, we know that tomorrow that may not be the case. The international community, and particularly the UN and the Security Council, have a very short memory when it comes to Israel. The terror that we endure quickly becomes a side note. But this time will not be the same. We will not let the world forget the atrocities our country suffered.
The Palestinian representative to the United Nations addressed Israel's response to the attacks, saying it will not accomplish its stated goals of destroying Hamas and ensuring its own security. He also criticized the international community by claiming nothing is done when those killed are Palestinians.
Israel keeps saying the blockade and repeated assaults on Gaza are to destroy Hamas military capabilities and ensure security. Clearly and expectedly, its blockade and assaults accomplished neither. Israel expects and demands political and military support while advancing goals that are fundamentally at odds with international legitimacy and consensus. Its policies are an assault on our humanity, on international law, on peace, and are a threat for its own people. Can those supporting Israel ignore its colonialist and racist agenda? That would be self-defeating. You cannot stand for peace if you do not stand up to occupation.
On Monday, Israel's defense minister ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip, cutting off food and electricity. The move has been condemned by the United Nations Secretary General, who says it will only worsen an already dire situation, and urged both sides to end the vicious cycle of violence.
The humanitarian situation in Gaza was extremely dire before these hostilities. Now it will only deteriorate exponentially. Medical equipment, food, fuel, and other humanitarian supplies are desperately needed, along with access for humanitarian personnel. Relief and entry of essential supplies into Gaza must be facilitated, and the UN will continue efforts to provide aid to respond to these needs. This most recent violence does not come in a vacuum. The reality is that it grows out of a long-standing conflict with a 56-year-long occupation and no political end in sight. It's time to end this vicious circle of bloodshed, hatred, and polarization. Israel must see its legitimate needs for security materialized, and Palestinians must see a clear perspective for the establishment of their own state realized. Only a negotiated peace that fulfills the legitimate national aspirations of Palestinians and Israelis, together with their security alike, the long-held vision of a two-state solution in line with United Nations resolutions, international law, and previous agreements, can bring long-term stability to the people of this land and the wider Middle East region.
According to the United Nations, nearly a tenth of the population have fled their homes in Gaza since the start of hostilities. The Gaza Strip, ruled by Hamas militants since 2007, is a territory between Israel, Egypt, and the Mediterranean Sea. It's home to about 2.3 million people and has one of the highest population densities in the world. Its economy has long been choked by a blockade imposed by Israel with Egypt's help. Hamas is backed by Iran, which funds it and provides weapons and training. Meanwhile, around the world, thousands of people have gathered to participate in vigils for Israeli victims, as well as pro-Palestine solidarity protests.
Palestine! Waving Palestinian flags and chanting slogans such as "We will not be silenced."
We will not be silenced!
Pro-Palestinian protesters gathered outside the Israeli embassy in London. Calling for an end to the violence, they said the people of Palestine are the ones paying the highest price for a conflict that has been going on for decades.
Of everything we've been seeing on the news, there seems to be a lot of misinformation about the actual events and who the real victims are here. It's a well-known fact that Gaza is under a blockade and has been for over 15 years. As you can see, there are a lot of people that agree that though there are atrocities being committed on both sides, it is ultimately the Palestinians that pay the highest price every time.
Outside Downing Street, Israelis gathered to hold a vigil for the victims and hostages taken by Hamas.
Just open your eyes. Just open your eyes and don't listen to all the fake news you see online. Every story has two sides.
I think everybody has seen why we have a border fence now, why we need soldiers, and why we don't have peace.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also visited a London synagogue to show his support for Israel.
I wanted to come here tonight to stand with you. To stand with you in this hour of grief, as we mourn the victims of an utterly abhorrent act of terror. The people who support Hamas are fully responsible for this appalling attack. They are not militants. They are not freedom fighters. They are terrorists. Their barbaric acts are acts of evil. There are not two sides to these events. There is no question of balance. I stand with Israel. We stand with Israel. The United Kingdom stands with Israel against this terrorism today, tomorrow, and always.
Reacting to the attack by Hamas, President Joe Biden said the United States will always have Israel's back.
Good afternoon. In this moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop. There's never justification for terrorist attacks.
In Australia, protesters marched to the Sydney Opera House and voiced their anger at the situation in Gaza and the Australian government's support of Israel. Arab cities have also seen street demonstrations in support of the Palestinians. Iran, who funds Hamas, celebrated the attacks, but on Tuesday, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei denied playing a direct role in them.
When Foreign Dispatches returns in just a moment, we explore the nature of drones in Africa's growing tech landscape. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. A powerful earthquake struck Herat province in Afghanistan near the border with Iran early on Wednesday, several days after two major quakes in the same area killed more than 2,000 people. The country has suffered significant damage from a series of recent disasters amid an ongoing economic and humanitarian crisis.
We're scrambling to pull out survivors and the dead from beneath the rubble 2 days after the northwestern city of Herat and its surroundings were struck. And on Wednesday, another 6.3 magnitude quake struck the region. There is little left of the villages in the region's dusty hills besides rubble. The Taliban administration says over 4,000 people have been killed and many more injured in the quakes. According to the World Health Organization, women and children make up 2/3 of the victims hospitalized with severe injuries.
The Ministry of Health in Afghanistan reported, and still they are counting, more than 2,500 deaths and more of thousands of people injured, different levels of injuries, which make us assume that the numbers are still growing, and we do not have the final figures still now, as the assessments are ongoing. The search and rescue is still ongoing, so we are expecting these figures even to get worse. There are people sitting there without shelter. They are afraid, they are scared. Even if they have partially damaged houses, they are scared to enter these houses. We have mild cases who receive treatment and should go back home, but unfortunately they do not have, as they told me yesterday in my visit to the hospital yesterday, they don't have home to go back to.
At this hospital in Herat, some of the injured are being treated, but resources are largely overwhelmed. Afghan healthcare system, largely reliant on foreign aid, has faced crippling cuts in the 2 years since the Taliban took over power. Much international assistance, which had formed the backbone of the economy, was halted. Diplomats and aid officials say concerns over Taliban restrictions on women and competing global humanitarian crises are causing donors to pull back on financial support. Apart from this hospital in the region, the WHO says a vast majority of the facilities are smaller basic health centers, and logistical challenges are hindering operations.
We have been watching the news diverted to what's going on in the Middle East over the past 2 days, and there was very little attention to the event in Afghanistan. Attention means funding as well, diversion of funding to other competing priorities with Afghanistan. Unfortunately, this country has been in need of foreign aid for many years due to the limited capacity and the limited resources inside the country.
The UN's Humanitarian Office has announced $5 million worth of assistance, but immediate material support has come from a limited few countries. Neighbors Pakistan and Iran have offered to send rescue workers and humanitarian aid, while China's Red Cross Society offered cash relief aid. Hemmed in by mountains, Afghanistan is frequently hit by strong earthquakes, many in the Hindu Kush region bordering Pakistan. The country has long been one of Asia's poorest and has been ravaged by conflict for decades. but its ability to respond to natural disasters has been further hampered since the Taliban seized power in 2021 following the chaotic US withdrawal, an event that saw many international aid groups pull out.
And finally, on the program, from climate monitoring to disaster relief and even delivery services, drones have a wide range of uses. However, their most well-known and debated application is in military operations involving surveillance and targeted strikes. In Africa, the drone industry is on the rise and is becoming a substantial sector, potentially bringing various benefits to the region. Our South African correspondent, Innocent Simosa, has this story.
Technological Innovation, a South African company, is spearheading the development of the continent's largest unmanned aerial vehicle, commonly known as drones. But what does this innovation mean for South Africa and the entire continent at large? I had the opportunity to speak with Daniel Du Plessis, Communications Manager at Milcore.
So this is the largest UAV that's ever been produced on the African continent. It is officially the largest one by any standard, but it's categorized as a medium altitude, long endurance UAV. There are only a few companies worldwide that have the capability and have successfully completed programs for the development of such a large scale UAV. And essentially it makes it possible for South Africa and also other African member states to make use of this technology for operations within the defense force and security branches.
As some countries endeavor to bolster their drone production capabilities, there have been reported delays in the progress of these drones. Daniel shed some light on the obstacles faced in this regard.
South Africa has a rich history of using UAVs since the 1980s, actually. And they've continued to develop with their own internal programs, various different sizes and applications of UAVs in general. And you're quite right in saying in the last 20 years it has been kind of quiet. And the main reason for that is there was a big skills drain from South Africa. Highly experienced engineers and software developers leaving the country to work for other companies abroad. And for us as a new developer of these technologies, it was quite important to secure those critical resources and skills to enable us to successfully complete this program. So that has been a massive challenge. We had to recruit some of the top minds from South Africa and across the world in order to facilitate and drive the necessary programs to complete this project. And luckily we have been able to do so, and we've been able to do so in quite a good track record and quite a good margin. I think many other countries have attempted such projects in the past and have also come to the same conclusion and the same understanding that the skills in your team that you have to work on this project critically drives the success of it.
What is the purpose behind the design of these drones? What role are they intended to fulfill?
This UAV is categorized as a medium altitude, long endurance UAV. And essentially what it means, it's a high endurance or long endurance reconnaissance, surveillance and intelligence gathering platform. Essentially what you can do with it is conduct field operations and surveillance operations to gather as much intel as possible, either before conducting ground-based operations or during ground-based operations, to provide vital real-time feedback back to your command base in order to make informed decisions.
The drone, with a wingspan of 18.6 meters, can remain in the air for 35 uninterrupted hours, sometimes impossible with a manned craft because humans need to rest. The craft can fly up to 2,000 kilometers.
Yes, there's been quite a few countries across the board that have shown quite a lot of interest. A lot of Asian countries, and specifically also a lot of African member states. Now, with Nigeria, they are in a unique position where they are riddled with coup attempts and successful attempts and coups in countries neighboring to them, which poses a tremendous threat to their border, and also facing an active combat with insurgencies within the country. Nigeria is not unaccustomed to UAV technologies of this scale and have been using some UAVs from different countries across the board. What I intend to do and what we intend to showcase as Milcore as a company is to promote this product and also the cohesion and synergy between the two countries in providing long-term after-sales support, so that it essentially means that your UAVs can be effectively operational for a longer period.
As part of an agreement with the South African Department of Defense, the first aircraft produced will be used exclusively by the South African government. From Centurion, South Africa, Innocent Samos for Foreign Dispatches.
And that's the program today. But remember, our top stories are never far away. You can catch them on channelstv.com. Thank you for watching. I'm Teniola Oyetayo. Bye for now.